If you've ever wanted to see the cinematic version of the Atlanta Falcons playing the Patriots in the Super Bowl, then boy do I have the movie for you. A movie that has a great first half, but just runs out of steam and can't bring it home. Trap puts us in the seat of Cooper, a man living two lives, one as a devoted family man, and the other as a mysterious serial killer known only as the Butcher. Cooper is cracking dad jokes as he takes his daughter to a Lady Raven concert, the fictional equivalent to Olivia Rodrigo or Taylor Swift. Oh man, he's sitting through an entire Taylor Swift concert with his daughter because she's been struggling with girls at school? That's saint behavior. That's got to atone for some of the butcherings. Not all of them, but like, maybe two or three. Well, once there, Cooper notices an inordinate amount of security. In fact, there's tons of police and SWAT there. It turns out the police found part of a receipt for tickets to this Lady Raven show at one of the butcher's secret safe houses. How do you have a physical receipt for concert tickets you bought in advance in the year 2024? I don't know. But once he realizes this, Cooper gets to work trying to figure out a way out of this locked down arena, manipulating those around him with his good natured charm, using unwitting allies for his own gain, trapped in a high stakes game of cat and mouse with the FBI profiler who has him pegged, trying to also keep up the lie he's lived to his daughter and take her with him. He sees throughout the concert more and more men matching his approximate profile be led away for questioning. As the walls close in around Cooper, does he have an ace in the hole? Or will the feds successfully spring their trap? I've got a soft spot for self contained movies. When I say self contained, I don't just mean they're not part of a trilogy or franchise or cinematic universe and exist on their own. I mean small movies. Movies that have a small cast, that don't jump between too many settings, and have a story that unfolds over the course of a day or even takes place just over the runtime of the film. Those movies highlight the true art behind storytelling in the film medium. The time constraint of movies brings out either the best or the worst in storytellers.
Do it! Kill her! Kill her! No!
Every scene, every shot, every line needs to matter. It's not a book or a TV show where you can run it as long as you want, develop things at whatever pace you're capable of, and veer off into side stories to your heart's content. Stories need to be streamlined when they're told in a movie, and these kinds of small movies embrace that. And when you embrace that, it forces you to devote your energy to making every line of dialogue relevant to either the plot, character development, or world building, and ideally more than one of those pillars of storytelling at a time. That's why 12 Angry Men is always vying for a top spot in my list of favorite movies of all time. But the same sort of benefits were reaped by the likes of My Dinner with Andre in 1917 and even Ferris Bueller's Day Off, packing in an entire story in a short amount of time. Well, the first half of Trap really capitalizes off of its small setting and tiny cast of characters. For the most part, the story is tight and clean. The ticket thing again is a struggle for me to wrap my head around, but other than that, there aren't too many flaws to speak of. There are some contrivances, but none that are too far-fetched. Cooper gets lucky a couple times, but nothing that makes you roll your eyes too hard. It's always pretty believable. For the most part, the plot progresses thanks to intelligent agents making smart decisions, with Cooper staying one step ahead of the authorities due in part to their underestimation of just how intelligent and resourceful he is, and how much he's figured out about their plan. Now, to talk about how this movie really struggles, I'll eventually need to give a small spoiler, like a 4 out of 10 on the spoiler scale. But before I do, I'll mention a couple things that I don't need to spoil anything for. Josh Hartnett is great. I don't think he's gotten the opportunities he maybe has deserved throughout his career, but in Trap, he's probably the one bright light that shines all the way through. The first half of the movie is really solid. It develops slowly and deliberately like a good thriller should. There's one character that seems to be in the movie for no justifiable reason, just a couple conversations that don't advance the story in any real, measurable way. But again, the first half, pretty solid. And the other thing to mention is the presence of M. Night Shyamalan's daughter. Now, I believe I may be the only movie buff on the planet that can honestly say they're indifferent to M. Night Shyamalan. I haven't seen all of his movies, but mostly I think they're fine. But reading about this film prior to the release, it seems most people have a strong opinion of him either way. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But take my words as potentially a rare neutral voice on Shyamalan. Obviously, putting your daughter in your movie as a pop star to play her own original music is pretty egotistical, and it's gonna be seen by many as a vanity project. I didn't listen too closely to her lyrics or anything because honestly, if someone tells me a singer's fan base is primarily teenage girls, I'm gonna do my best to tune that music out. I can say she's not a great performer in the movie beyond the music, though. She's pretty wooden, doesn't dance very well. But then again, I've seen Taylor Swift dance, so clearly, if your songs have a large enough appeal to young women, you don't need to be able to put on an exhilarating show. Here's what I'll assert about Salika, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Salika Shyamalan. She's a fine enough actress. A lot of people are disgusted by her mere presence in this movie. She's a Nepo baby. And I mean, kinda, yeah. But if I hadn't known she was M. Night's daughter, I wouldn't have seriously questioned her being in the film. She doesn't compare side by side with Josh Hartnett, but no one does. Not even Haley Mills, who plays the FBI profiler, so she gets a pass from me. Now, here's my minor spoiler so I can talk about the big second half struggle. So, last chance to bail. Okay, now that the plebes are gone. About halfway through the movie, the story leaves the concert venue. And from then on, everything is off. Not awful, not off the rails, just off. Based on the strength of the first half, I felt myself trying to will the movie to be good, but it just started to slip away. It's like the good movie was water that was held in a cup for the first hour, but then was poured into someone's hands for the last 45 minutes, and it just slowly trickled through the cracks between their fingers. Now Cooper is getting out of situations in ways I just have to scratch my head and say, that doesn't work, there were too many eyes on him. The twists start getting a little old as they prolong the story and aren't as earned. Most everything had a payoff. There are no big red herrings. You can look back and see that the setup was in fact there, you just missed it in the moment. I'm saying it doesn't deteriorate to Knives Out depths.
She didn't say, you did this. She said,
You did this.
you did this.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But I mean, at one point, a character tanks 3 tasers and just keeps trucking along. Things just start to get off. Even the pacing is off. Again, it's not the worst. The movie's not too long. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It's just weird. Like, if I had to split up the acts for you, the first act would probably be just under an hour. The second act is about 35 minutes, and the third act is like 15. When the story leaves the concert, it all broadens out. We get more characters so that Cooper's character development mostly just stops at the 1 hour mark. The movie, which teases being about delving into the mind of a serial killer, kind of pulls away from that and becomes just will they catch him or not. We go to more locations, which takes a lot of restrictions off M. Night Shyamalan. So now, instead of Cooper outsmarting the feds and escaping from right under their noses, he's just getting away using things we had no idea he had access to. With less restrictions, it's actually less creative. And that's kind of a paradox of creativity. Oftentimes, the more restrictions you put on yourself, the more boxed in your story is, the more rules you have to follow, the more you have to think about how to maneuver your story around in that box, and that's where creativity actually shines. I remember in AP Psychology my senior year of high school, we did an exercise like this. I don't remember how it pertained to psych, but who cares? We were given an object, like a paperclip or a child's stacking block, and we had to write down as many uses for the object as we could in the span of a couple minutes. Some people could only think of 1 or 2 uses, basically the object's intended use. Some did a little better, but they kind of repeated the same use just slightly differently. But there were a few people that had a dozen or more unique, pretty reasonable uses written down. Those people were the really creative ones. Well, in this movie, bringing it back, it seems like M. Night Shyamalan got the object of a concert at a basketball arena, and he was able to write down a few ideas based on that restriction, but they only got him through about an hour of the story, so he kind of just threw that restriction out to free up more ideas. So Trap? It's a really cool premise, a pretty solid movie to start. It just loses faith in its ability to execute on that premise, and honestly ends up a major disappointment. Little future note, Flight Risk comes out in October, which is billing itself as a similar, small-scale, tight story. So we'll see if Mel Gibson, who's directing that one, can ride his small premise through the whole movie. And if you want to hear my review of that movie when it comes out, and plenty of films in between then, be sure to subscribe, and see you next time.
All right, the sauce.
What?
The sauce. I don't know. You're using too much sauce. Okay? Review's over.